can she do a Jedi mind trick when she had learned about the Force like a day ago or something? And then he comes back at the very end by force projecting himself. What is that? He's basically just a distraction for the First Order, and then he dies. That's how Luke dies. He was a distraction. Wow. Hey guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to be talking about a toy or collectible, but instead I'm going to be talking about a series of movies. A certain series of movies, of which I don't really like. And as a matter of fact, these movies are called Star Wars movies. But these Star Wars movies, they're not like the ones that have come before. They've done things with the Force that have never been done before, even at the time when Jedi were way more prominent than ever before in history, before the Dark Times, before the Empire. But we'll get into all that later. For right now, I want to talk about the first gripe that I have with the first movie. And it's the gripe that everybody has, and that it's a rehash. I've heard people defend it. They'll say, oh, it's okay because they were just trying to get people back into Star Wars, so they wanted to give them something they already knew. But the problem is that this is in a story with certain continuity, okay? And so, when you take something that's already happened before, and that, especially if that thing already had low odds of happening in the first place, let me elaborate. The odds that Darth Vader, this guy's dad, was going to be flying over the guy's planet, and then he has to go chase after droids that not only happen to land on the planet's surface, but happen to land in the general vicinity where the guy is. The odds of that happening alone are insanely low. So having it happen again, basically, with slightly different circumstances, but the same principle is happening, is just ridiculous. And let's not forget that The Force Awakens is where the whole Rey learns the Force without training crap began. And I know they wanted to show people using the Force in the movie, but that's why you use Luke as the mentor figure instead of Han. That was a big mistake. Why would you do that? I mean, if you're gonna rehash it, at least do something that makes sense. Why is Han the mentor figure? He doesn't know the Force. I thought we were trying to have people learn the Force. But no, Rey can just know the Force immediately, so it's fine. I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. How can she do a Jedi mind trick when she had learned about the Force like a day ago or something? Those are pretty much the only things with The Force Awakens that I think is really a problem. I mean, the fact that they also have another Death Star is pretty stupid. Once again, it's a rehash of the first movie, but it's like, why? Why would those people who saw what the Empire did and saw that that failed twice, why would they build a big Death Star thingy? It obviously doesn't work. The Star Killer Base. Now we'll move on to The Last Jedi. I personally think this is the worst out of all of them, because of what they did to Luke. It was a joke. It was a total joke. Go away. So in The Force Awakens, you're left off with Rey handing Luke his lightsaber. And that was actually pretty sweet, you know? I mean, that wasn't a rehash of anything. That was just like, that was new. So that was cool. I liked that, you know? But then they open with The Last Jedi and he throws it over his shoulder? People laughed and I was like, this is an atrocity. Why are you laughing? It's not funny. This sucks. I mean, yeah, I guess it's funny if you don't care. This is ridiculous. Are you kidding me? Why would he do that? And his reasoning sucked too. So, here's the thing. You're telling me that the guy who saw good in Darth Vader sensed that there might be a little bit of dark side coming into Kylo Ren, so he decided to kill him? That doesn't make any sense. Luke had the chance to kill Darth Vader, and he said to the Emperor, I am a Jedi, like my father before me, and he threw his lightsaber. Luke doesn't do that. And then he ran off like a little freaking baby. Are you kidding me? What is this? No way. That is ridiculous. And then he comes back at the very end by force projecting himself. what is that? And he's basically just a distraction for the First Order, and then he dies. That's how Luke dies. He was a distraction. Wow. What a joke. And an atrocity. It's not a funny joke, it's an atrocity. And I was going to talk about this when I was talking about The Force Awakens, but the fact that Snoke says it in The Last Jedi, you were bested by a girl who had just picked up a lightsaber, you have failed! Yeah, what the heck? What is wrong with you? Why do you suck like that? I mean, come on. So it's like, why is she so good, or why do you suck so much? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, he has a right to be pissed. That's pretty much all I have to say about The Last Jedi. I mean, everything else has been beaten to death. And then you have The Rise of Skywalker. And this is where it really shows that the movies were not planned at all, and nothing, I mean, yeah, so the original trilogy wasn't really planned at first, but eventually they had a good idea of what the story was going to be like. So, the fact that Rey was originally, didn't know who her parents were, and then she was nobody, you know, and that seemed like the answer, and then all of a sudden, no, actually, it's different. It's like, that's just so clear that they had no idea what the hell was going on. And that's not okay, you know? You can't just give it to a bunch of different people and not know what you're gonna do, really, and then just slap together a bunch of movies. That's not gonna work, especially with one of the greatest franchises of all time, Star Wars. What were they thinking? To quote James Rolfe, what were they thinking? And in the same situation with Snoke addressing how it was ridiculous that Kylo Ren lost to Rey, they also addressed something else in The Rise of Skywalker that was ridiculous in The Last Jedi. Some rebel pilot guy, when they're planning an attack, says, why don't we play some hold-down maneuvers? And somebody's like, oh, that's a 1 in a million chance. Why? How does that make sense? Like, what did she do that was so special? You know, she looks like she just put it into hyperspeed and rammed into a ship. You know, like, that's why you don't do that, because it doesn't make sense. First of all, hyperspace in Star Wars, it's theorized that you go to a different dimension. So you wouldn't really run into things and break them, but you could get hurt by hitting them, basically. So, yeah, no, that's not how it works. So why did you make it be like that? So now there's all of these questions, like, well, if you could do that, why didn't they just get a droid and have it piloted into a ship at hyperspeed? Like, what? So that guy addressing it in The Rise of Skywalker doesn't help anything. It just seems more stupid. When you go, oh, it's 1 in a million, like, why? But then they introduced the cheapest and most overpowered Force ability ever conceived by man. Force teleport. That's what I call it, at least, because there's not really a very good name for it, because you're not really teleporting yourself, you're teleporting other items. For example, when Kylo Ren rips the necklace off of Rey through their Force Skype call, which is also something new. Usually you just hear people, now you can see them. I guess it's like the telephone, now you can actually see people, that's why they call it Skype. But now you can just straight up send items through the Force. It's like a Force fax, but with items instead of paper. But the problem is, why was that never used before? Just like the Holo Maneuver. Can you imagine how useful those things would have been? And that's why you can't just introduce an overpowered thing into a franchise that already exists. And then the best line in the whole movie. Palpatine's returned. That's it. They don't explain anything. They just say Palpatine's return. Poe says it. And it's hilarious. I mean, I already knew because of the Fortnite leak or whatever. They don't explain anything. They just say the same thing that Palpatine says in Episode 3. Something about how the dark side can do things that people consider unnatural. Or whatever. I don't really know the quotes from the prequels. But then how did Palpatine clone himself? You know, like, you saw him blow up first when he got thrown down the shaft. You saw the stuff come up. And then he got blown up again when the second Death Star blew up. Like, what? And that's another thing about The Rise of Skywalker. Why are there pieces of the Death Star on the water moon of Endor or whatever? That doesn't make sense. The Death Star was, like, disintegrated. So overall, I think the Disney sequel trilogy is terrible. And I remember in, 2012, when Disney purchased Star Wars, I knew it was gonna end up bad. I just knew. I mean, that was around the same time I started really collecting these. So I knew things were gonna go south.